Evening, everybody. I'd like to call this public hearing to put conduct to order, being held here in the Board of Education building, 2023 at 6:30 p.m. Started with bullet points of the revision center.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Reddick.
Just want to clarify.
Understood. So, I'm ready to set the backdrop of the revision of the code of conduct. So last year, looking at its entire Board of Education policy service and service to the new NISBA policy service. One of the things that was discovered very quickly, the fact that portion of board policy touched in almost 11 years. The last revision, in fact, was in 2012. The code of conduct, one of the requirements of revision of this portion of the document for Goshen Central School District, comprised of several Board of Education members, building administrators and teachers, and several of us as district administrators as well. We met intermittently from actually beginning with the board in May, but August, where we looked at versions, new iterations, ultimately arriving on the document that we have now. Input and some feedback on how we wanted to land at the final version of what you see to all the different subgroups that you see here. Students, staff, and any visitors to the building. Abuse, safety, and all of these different topics were discussed as we went through the process. Just a quick summary of some of the changes. If you look at the format of the proposed revisions to the Code of Conduct, again, you'll notice a just in format itself. As I had shared before, the board opted to move from the now the NISBA policy service and the new Code of Conduct format that the New York State School. The language is intended to be easier to read, more positive, and again, you're going to see throughout the document of action is not just something that the district is looking at, it's something that the state education department has largely been sharing with school districts, asking them to consider, asking boards of education to consider looking at options that are more solutions oriented, learning from the mistakes, looking at pro-social skills to use in the future, and again, looking at different types of tiered response. Here in the document. That does not mean that there will not be accountability. Very seriously, but some of the less invasive actions, if you will, we will be looking at processes into how we deal with the rise and the buildings. Looking again at the next page. We're looking to roll this. The things that we different. Code and mirroring that in the building level documents as well. What's applicable not be as elaborate as once you get to the secondary buildings, especially with the high school. And again, after the board adopts this revised code of conduct, then we will spend the next couple months working with administrators, looking at the building level, have the time to work, update interpretation, when building level charts, and I call them the infraction charts. Those a code of conduct that has been adopted by the Board of Education. Some summary of what has been included in the new proposed update. I said a few minutes ago that safety really takes on many mental health, physical health, and not just the physical security of the building are really what we want to focus on. We want that approach. You'll see much more prevalent in the new proposed code. Access to the desk coordinators, school-based in the town, but also within community resource Orange County as well. Significant change also that exists in the again, looking at if a student has an opportunity to, again, through restorative practice, make application to the Board of Education on some of those lesser infractions before they graduate, whether they wanted to apply to the Board of Education of that discipline. So again, thinking about where we are now, bringing all of this full circle. We months of June and August. And whether or not those that have set thing to do, the board can have an opportunity at any time to reconvene the full stakeholder committee. It needs to be updated. The fact that we brought a full stakeholder committee together, that really focused on the large revision that we did. Much smaller groups at the direction of the board. So with that, Mr. Long, I'll turn it back over to you so I can hear from anyone that wants to speak.
Great, thank you very much. One of the intentions that we did have was to have a mid-year visiting. We spoke to our building administrators during our meeting, saying that it would be great to hear from them. Any modification. Thank yous, and I'd really just like to specifically thank all of our building admins. Them during this summertime process. Dr. Coates and Mr. Carter provided a lot of feedback from Marine, and it really, we had some great input from our students. We had high school provides us all valuable feedback. So students out there, seriously amazing input. And then our Jen Fitzpatrick, Patty Hartley, Allison Newman, and thank you so much for all your time this summer. We really do appreciate that. So as we move forward tonight, and after the start of the meeting, there is a sign-up sheet over here. I'm going to bounce it back tomorrow. Listen to all of the feedback you have to give. After your feedback, we will break and have a in the moment. All right. So we had one sign up so far. When you come up, Mary Zakarkovitz.
Yes, I revision. It was like near and dear to my heart to get it done, so it's awesome. So a lot of feedback is just the basic stuff that I think will be easy enough to that I think will be easy enough to implement and make changes to. So just generally, the table of content should be a functioning table of content. Like if you're looking at it online, you should be able to click a link. On page 9, there is no definition of discrimination, which I think is a gap. It's actually referenced quite throughout the document, so I think that would generally speaking, if you're other policies, it'd also be great to have a link at the bottom of that page. There's a couple of misses or an appendix that has sort of a list of all the different policies that are referenced where to find. With regards to the suspension related consequences, does the actual suspension commence? And is it after the fact that? So that was not clear, and if that is the case, I think that should be made clear. And just generally speaking, some of the formatting, there's like a couple of duplicative words, things like that. The last paragraph before you list out the consequence, I think it should include that the list indicates who can determine or impose that consequence. While it's inferred, it's not super clear, so I would just would probably make sense on page 45 related to the I have things, but not super important. Any questions?
Your last comment on page 45.
Oh, page 8. Other policies referenced, and I think it might be important to reference the AUP as well. Just because that gets a little confusing with cell phone.
A couple of other little.
Those were wrote down. I wasn't sure if we had to have it all for tonight, so sorry.
So first off, I wanted to say thank you and congratulations. I think the new code is a significant improvement. You know, a lot of things included in there that are really good. So well done and get it. I only had one was better define the level of severity of infraction. So for instance, there's a listing of different infractions, but it's hard to tell more versus less. There's a possibility where you could go back and look at discipline over the past couple of years and say, what are the most common offenses? Level 3, which can then be connected to the discipline that is provided. Across like across administrators and how they apply discipline. Students and parents and administrators merits what discipline. Policy that was brought up earlier. It says if the student I think it's a follow-on to almost what Mary was talking about before. If there's a discipline that was applied, is the board able to expunge that disciplinary action? I've heard different things. Doing it now, because that is something that the board should have the authority to do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Coming very prepared, that was very concise. So at this time, I think, you know what, maybe just a topics that you'd like to comment on. Last time.
In terms of it being digital and online, a great idea. I mean, definitely, if you can just clink to whatever the policy is, refreshes you. There's so many policies out there. Absolutely. So
I agree with you. Last. And we. And I think we'll be able to implement that, but yeah, I agree that that's. That I think we should keep on our radar. Oh, yeah, please.
So one of the things that we had to do quickly, obviously, to get the public was what you format, obviously. Once this is approved and our webmaster starts to type everything into HTML format. On top of our game to be able to do that.
that's great.
Yeah.
Worth pointing out when you mentioned putting the policy section, I think we actually discussed that as well, and as we're so absolutely an excellent idea, and that is part of the plan. Something to remember is that, and it goes pretty, the building is gonna make some changes to their conduct to go along and reflect something that our students really did ask for, to have more specific. In school-based, school-based policies. Okay.
I'm really glad you on that. I think that was a good point. We did have a chance to scratch the surface with some of the building level code. And I know that Dr. Code timeline laid out year, so we can have those all aligned in terms of aligning with everything we see here in the overall.
A quick question on that, do parents sign up on the?
District-wide.
It is the district-wide one, because I feel like that's something else. Or easily see those school or the building codes.
Was the district-wide, that was the first major goal, and then that will be used as the platform for all of the building levels to realign. Yes, which one do they sign up in their?
Call them the old days. Remember the old days when we used to give out to school planners? We used to tear out the
Yeah.
sheet out of the school planner. with COVID when the school planners at the same time. What I've encouraged the building principals to do is make sure that every one of them has the opportunity now to present it digitally. The building level, calling them codes or not called, the interpretation of the district-wide code of conduct. At age appropriate levels, so going back to what I shared earlier, Scott. Appropriate versus the high school, bigger kids, different problems.
Right, makes sense, okay, thank you. I ask?
Yeah, I don't
Building-
mind if you're asking a question, especially if it's like a clarity.
Yeah. Building on what you're saying, will someone can't read very well or are in yes for reading, special ed for reading, writing, that's getting to them, understand it before they sign.
Yeah, sure.
So one of the things that came up several times when we met with students and with families was to pick that dedicated. And going back to the old days, we used to say in the high school and social studies for go over it. Like math, you pick one subject where you know every student has to go through a cycle. We're supposed to make sure that they go back and they do that again, so. It's going to be a transition year, if the board chooses to adopt the new code. Adopted, the buildings are gonna need time to meet with their teachers, then to align, so it's not gonna all now take this, there'll be some training though. Some have never been trained in any kind of restorative practice, they're gonna need time to look at this document. It will happen. Be living in two worlds, but there will be a transition phase as the district code.
I'm glad you brought that up because that was really, to that point, one of the topics. The information. And again, we're at the top level right now, being that we're reviewing the district code. And it really the access to information and how we could update that and make that easier for the students to find and parents to find in the future. So on those items. Definitions. You know, we did work with and with everything that was in this book. These follow-up definitions is something we could look into, and if there's anything that comes up, maybe we can go ahead and, you know, find what the appropriate definition would be as a starting point and implement it. Any other thoughts, feedback from the board?
I have one question. It's in follow-up to Mr. Winkler's question. Currently, the appeal suspension. Is Board of Ed, correct? No.
That whether or not there's any due process issues or anything like that. However, the only appeal of the proposal, that's different.
So I guess my question is, one of the things Mr. Winkler asked, and paraphrase. Expunge a suspension that it felt was unwarranted, but it wouldn't have.
So there's a difference between an expungement and something
Got it.
implemented.
Well, that would speak to Zachary Kevin's question before. Suspension be served before the appeal process is done. Fixed. Also,
I think,
I do think we should just proceed with caution with how deep. One of the items that appealed to us was this movement towards restorative practice. To learn from maybe a small mishap that could then be stricken away. In we relied on our attorneys to try to help us draft the first pass at the language. We had 2 or 3 back our code of conduct committee. We actually then again met with the board first 2 iterations. So in regards to this one topic, the reason I said let's maybe be getting too specific and granular on this is I think the first pass right now kind of makes a little bit of sense where we start as a starting point. Could there be some tweaks to it? That we owe it to ourselves to continue with the same due diligence that we that actually have this type of expungement of records. So it's kind of interesting that we're moving on. I think where we stand now. Any other thoughts from any of the other members?
I agree. And working on it through with you, I completely agree.
And I do think we heard some really good points, and I don't believe the final conversation we'll have about this. I think there'll certainly be more to come. Any other?
I would just say, I just appreciate everybody putting their effort in, the community, the students, parents, the board. Who comes here tonight to have a better understanding of it, thank you.
I appreciate the technical input. We are getting some feedback that our live stream is a little bit choppy. The meeting, we will end the live stream for anybody who's tuned in right now, and we will start the live stream. Okay, board members, I think. How does everybody feel about moving forward with adopting this code of conduct as a fresh new start? Great. Fantastic. All right. With that being said, Dr. Coates, if you don't have any.
Just as the board is coming forward.
Everybody, we really do appreciate it, and I'd like to call this portion of the meeting closed. Thank you.
John. That